cool. It's Mondo cool. That's right, boys. Mondo cool.
Phantasy Star Universe is a science fiction action RPG dungeon crawler developed by Sonic Team and published by Sega. It was once an MMO, but the online servers for all 3 platforms have been closed for over a year now as of this recording. This is specifically a review of the offline single-player campaign. Please keep that in mind. I never had a chance to play this game online when the service was available, so I have nothing of substance to say about that aspect of the game. Despite being released for the Xbox 360 and the PC platform, this game was clearly built as a PS2 game first and was then ported to the other platforms. As a result, the game largely looks like a PS2 game even on the more powerful platforms. I've played both the PS2 and Xbox 360 versions of this game. The graphics in both are exactly the same with only one real difference. The Xbox 360 is capable of HD, while the PS2 isn't. This makes the Xbox 360 version the slightly superior version because it runs at a higher resolution. However, other than that, and I guess the size of the font during cutscenes, the graphics are completely identical for both of these versions. Now, while I've never personally played the PC version, I have seen gameplay of it, and it seems to be the exact same deal. With that said, even for a PS2 game, this is not a good-looking game. One huge complaint I have are that all the dungeons look the same. Now, some may argue that this is a staple of the dungeon crawler genre. However, the biggest difference between this game and other games in the same genre is that most of them, such as Dark Cloud and Diablo, have randomly generated dungeons. So it's completely understandable for those games to have environments that all look the same. However, for Phantasy Star Universe, all the dungeons are actually handcrafted, so there's really no excuse. It's especially bad that the environments themselves just don't look good. Dark Cloud 2 specifically had randomly generated dungeons, and the dungeons in that game looked far superior in terms of graphical quality to Phantasy Star Universe. That's just shameful. Character models look very dull, but their animations during cutscenes in particular look really awkward and out of place. This is especially true during cutscenes with a lot of movement, such as ones where characters are trying to fight each other. There's nothing natural or fluid about any of these movements. It just makes me wish I didn't have to see them, as they're just an eyesore. It's especially sad when you see they're trying to make this look cool, when it just isn't. During battle, the animations are decent enough, but the particle effects are really underwhelming. Another issue during combat is the slowdown. This was somewhat understandable on the PS2 version, but why does this persist on the Xbox 360 version? That's just unacceptable. A visual oddity in this game is when you walk around a city. At first, it looks like there's tons of NPCs walking around, but when you actually try to get near any of them, they disappear. I appreciate them trying to give the illusion of a crowd, despite the hardware limitations of the PS2, but this should not have been the way to do it, and it shouldn't have been an issue on the other platforms. It just comes off as strange and unnecessary, as it only serves to break immersion, as opposed to create it, which is what I believe was the original intent with this idea. The only semi-decent looking aspect of this game are the FMVs, and even those manage to look like shit from time to time. They look good for the most part, actually, but typically whenever you see a character, they just look bad. I guess I can give some credit. It's actually a very colorful game, which is nice, but it still doesn't make up for how generally ugly it is. One of the biggest disappointments in terms of visuals in this game is how unremarkable the lightsabers look. The weapons are clearly Star Wars inspired, but these weapons do not have the same grace as the ones we're familiar with from the Star Wars franchise. I'm not saying they should have just ripped them off and make them look exactly the same, but at least give them some character. The way they are in the game, they just look like flat polygons just being flailed about, as opposed to the awe-inspiring awe-inspiring lightsabers that we know and love. It's really a shame. This game is just wholly unappealing to look at. The music in this game is really inconsistent. There actually are some good songs here and there, but there are also some bad ones. And there are even some that just blend in and are completely forgettable. And there are even some that aren't bad on their own, but are completely unfitting in the context that they're used in. I don't even know how to properly describe the soundtrack of this game, other than it probably doesn't even know what it is either. It's just so all over the place, with a techno song here and a frickin' gospel song over there. Also, I just want to say real quick that the opening song for this game is god-awful. It plays every single time you finish a chapter. I'm so glad that the game at least gives you the courtesy of skipping it. While I can at least say that there are some good songs here and there, the same cannot be said for the frickin' voice acting. Holy fuck, does the voice acting suck in this game. This is without a doubt the worst voice acting I have ever heard for a video game. No, I'm not exaggerating for effect. I didn't just say that to be funny. I'm being completely 100% honest with you. This voice acting is horrendous. Don't believe me? Give me a sec. Let me turn this shit up for you.
Okay, I'm sure you've heard of us, so why don't you just go back to the hole you came from? Unless you want a piece of me. Understand, chump?
And if I don't?
If you don't... I guess this punk hasn't heard of us after all. Now we'll make sure you never forget us.
See? Fucking awful! How can it be this bad? Sometimes even the lip syncing is really off, to the point where it doesn't even look like they were trying. The worst part is that the absolute weakest voice actor out of all of them is the main character. You have to listen to him more than anyone, which just makes it so much worse. This game follows our main character, Ethan Weber, a punk kid who hates Guardians. Guardians are basically the space police of the galaxy. Why does Ethan hate them? Well, because his father used to be one, and eventually his father died being a Guardian. But wouldn't you know it, something bad happened and Ethan is saved by a Guardian. I'm sure most of you figured out by now, but Ethan starts to see the Guardians in a new light and decides to join them. Aside from being very predictable, the plot is very padded out. It meanders and has tons of filler until it stumbles to the end where everything is somehow resolved. The main plot centers around eradicating the Seed, which are some inexplicable alien parasite thing that creates monsters. Since the Seed have no personality of their own, the story tries to grip you with its main villain Magashi, but he just comes off as tacked on. I honestly don't even know why he's the villain, other than the plot dictates it so, and he's just not a very nice guy, I guess. Along with a very boring plot comes with some awful characters, in particular being the main character, Ethan. The combination of his voice work and terrible dialogue makes this guy infuriating to watch. Several times I wanted to punch Ethan in the face whenever he said something stupid in a cutscene. His character doesn't even make any sense. He seems to not know about really basic things. Now, I've seen other games employ this technique in order to make the player feel like they're learning the world along with the character. And this has worked in games like Kingdom Hearts, because in that game, the main character is from another world, so everything is new to him. But Ethan has lived in this world his whole life, yet he's completely unaware of some fairly basic stuff. It just makes him come off as an imbecile. Another trio of equally insufferable characters are the Vole brothers. These guys are this game's attempts at being funny, and they're just not. They're just painful to watch. While stupid can be funny, these guys simply aren't. The only character that isn't completely insufferable is Karen. She's not even a good character. She's just not awful. And yet even she is ruined by the so-called plot twist that anyone can see coming. The worst part is that the world that this game takes place in had a lot of potential. The technology in this era is really advanced, and it could have given way to some really cool stuff, but nothing is done with any of it besides stuff we've seen already. Combine the wasted potential with a confused plot, terrible characters, and awful writing, this game's cutscenes are literally a chore to sit through. With all that said, we come to the gameplay, where I can actually and finally say some good things about this game, but unfortunately even that won't last very long either. Before I start trashing it again, however, the weapon variety in this game is actually really good. Each weapon is different, feels different, and has its own set of abilities. Speaking of abilities, something I quite enjoyed in this game is how using the same skills over and over level them up. Leveling up the skills generally raise the amount of damage that they do, but they also allow for the animations to become more elaborate. It's a nice touch and adds more of an incentive to use them. However, that's where the praise ends. First off, I know this game was an MMO at one point, but why oh why can't I simply pause the game properly? I'm playing offline. I shouldn't have to deal with the game not pausing when I open the menu. It's ridiculous. Combat in this game is laughably simple. It's just matching X and Y the entire time. Actually, let me say that again. It's only mashing the Y button. The reason I say that is because this button is what uses skills. Skills, by default, are more powerful than your regular moves and level up as you use them. So there's literally no point of using regular attacks for 99% of the game. Using skills does use up a certain meter called the PP meter. But each weapon has its own meter as opposed to the character. Since you can carry 6 weapons at a time, and the items used to replenish these meters are fairly cheap, trust me, you're not going to be using regular attacks very often. The only times I ever used regular attacks were to open boxes. Something else that's just mind-boggling about this game are the time trials. I hate them for 2 reasons. One is that I generally just hate when I feel like I'm being timed, unless I'm playing some high-octane action game like Devil May Cry or something. I'd rather take my time, and Phantasy Star gives the impression that it's that kind of game that lets you play at your own pace. But these time trials go against that. The biggest problem with them, however, is that if you want to learn the really cool, high-level skills in this game, you have to learn them by S-ranking these missions with characters that have the abilities that you want. What's worse is that it only gives you the possibility of getting a skill. I've S-ranked several missions in this game, and by the end of the game, I only learned 2 skills. One of them being a spell, which was completely useless for my offensive-based character. The combat in this game is generally dull. There's no blocking, there's no parrying, there's no dodging, and there isn't anything outside of the combat either to make it interesting. This game does try to change it up. There's also some synthesis and weapon upgrades that you can do, but I rarely ever made use of them because they just never really seemed that important. The only other things that you can do are really pointless stuff like changing your clothes and adding decorations to your house. Truly awful. Phantasy Star Universe is offensive on all fronts. This is the second worst RPG I have ever played. Everything about this game is just appalling. And it's really a shame because there are so few science fiction RPGs aside from Star Ocean out there that are worth anything. This game could have been really cool, but it's just held back by so many baffling elements. Maybe the game was more fun when it was online, but honestly, I kind of doubt it. Because if online was anything like the single player, I think the only thing that would have made it enjoyable would have been playing it with friends, and not because the game itself was really anything special. Well, that aspect of the game is dead anyway, so I'll never truly know. The only people I can actually recommend this to are those that want an extremely easy 1,000 achievement points, because all you have to do is beat the game. But that's only if you can stomach how god-awful this game is. I only paid $3 for this game, and I still feel ripped off. This has been Shintai, folks. Take it easy.